So today we're going to shoot a lot of exercises that you need to avoid in the gym. Some of these are going to be very common and some of them that you see all over the place, but today I'm going to show you why they're probably not a good choice for you. So one of the first exercises you're going to see in a normal gym that you probably need to avoid most times is the leg extension machine. Now the leg extension machine in and of itself is not too bad, but there's a reason that you stay away from it. One is because most people's quadricep to hamstring ratio is not that great, meaning that the quadricep is way stronger than the hamstring. So doing an isolated movement such as a leg extension is going to cause this ratio to have a lot more of an issue, therefore creating a knee problem. The next issue is that because of where the pressure is, which is actually on the front of the shin, as you can see, the weight I'm moving is in front of my foot versus underneath my foot. That's causing a lot of pressure going downward into the patella, pushing the patella into the knee. So if you have knee issues, you have to be very careful using leg extensions because it will make your quadricep look better, but it will increase mileage on your knee, especially if you don't have very big hamstrings. And as you can see, my hamstring is just as big and meaty as my quadricep. They're almost exact, which means that's why I'm a good squatter, why I'm a good deadlifter, but it's also why my knees are healthy. So if you're doing leg day, remember that put most emphasis on your hamstring, not on the quad. The next exercise you want to avoid is a very wide grip bench press. In the beginning, when you first start to train, even in the intermediate stages, you got to learn that the triceps are the main pressor to doing a good bench press, and going wider is going to tend to be more shoulder and more pec involvement. Now I know in gym class we were all taught that the bench press is a pec exercise, but in reality you need to treat it as a tricep exercise if you want to do it for a long period of time. So what I would tend to avoid when you're first learning, I would try to train the bench in a more of a narrow grip than I would a wide grip. So that way you can learn to have your arms more linear, and I'll show you. So the wrong way to do something when you first start is, and I did the same thing when I was a kid, is a lot of people will go all the way out with their first finger on the smooth. Now as you can see, that's a pretty wide grip. My bones are at kind of poor angles. Now it would make sense that my range of motion is shorter, but actually out this wide it's going to be a lot more pec involvement. So what I would say is when you're first learning to bench is to get your thumbnails somewhere where the knurling starts, so you can see where my thumbs come, and then I'm going to bench there. Look how much more straight my arms are. Now it's a longer range of motion, but it's actually going to make me have to use a lot more tricep to bench press. That in turn is going to make my technique better, it's going to keep my joints in a better position, and it's also going to give me more longevity. And then if you decide that you want to go wider after that point, you can, but do not start off learning how to bench in a wide grip where you're going to be in a big issue down the road. The next exercise that you need to avoid is bicep training, at least for a while. Reason being is if you get your biceps too strong, it's going to start affecting your back work, meaning that your back training is going to not go nearly as planned because you're going to use too much bicep to do stuff. So for the first 10 or 15 years that I trained really hard, I didn't train a lot of biceps. I made sure that my back got strong first. So it's an exercise to avoid until your back gets strong. So doing bicep curls, although looks really good at the beach and awesome at the mall, you need to avoid doing a lot of these until you have super big rear delts and lots of lats, so that way when you're doing your back training, it doesn't become an arm day. The next thing that you want to avoid is shoe type. Now, what does that mean? Well, you have various different types of shoes you can lift in. This would be similar to a Chuck Taylor or a flat-soled shoe. And that this would be an elevated shoe that you're seeing a lot of training. I tend to like to avoid anything with an elevated heel. As you can see, it tapers from here, gets larger here. And the reason is that it puts more pressure over on the midfoot. Now this is awesome if you're trying to do ass to grass squats, doing clean and jerks or snatches where you have to go insanely deep, way below parallel. You're gonna have to have a little bit of a heel just for the ankle mobility. But as you know, I teach a very flat or straight shank squat, and I think that you should master a flat soled shoe, and then if you decide you want to try a heel, go for it. But in the beginning, try to avoid heeled shoes and go to a more flat soled shoe, and that's going to give you a little bit more glute recruitment, and it's going to help you to learn how to squat with proper mechanics first. Also, shoes that are built such as this will allow you to actually push out on the sole without the shoe actually rolling. These have a very flat, they don't tend to have a lot of push out ability without rolling, which can cause ankle issues. So I'm just not a huge fan of the elevated heel. I think it changes the foot pressure and takes it away from being optimal. You want to try to have as much heel pressure and keep the weight on the back part of the foot as much as possible. And when you're elevated, it's going to shift the weight more to here. So try to master a flat-soled shoe in the squats, and then if you decide you want to go to elevated shoes, so be it. But avoid elevated shoes when you first start. So today we went over some big cues on things that I would avoid. One, I'd avoid a wide grip bench press, so that way you learn that the bench press is about this. The next thing was the shoes, right? We want to try to master a flat sole, and if you decide to go heel after that, so be it. But try to master a flat sole. You were born that way, your body's meant to work that way. The next thing I would avoid is leg extensions, or at least until you have strong enough hamstrings in order to do them, because they do create a lot of patellar pressure, both horizontally, and they also cause a lot more. If you're doing a lot more quadricep work, you're probably avoiding hamstrings. They're not equal in training. Hamstrings need to be trained way more and way harder than the quadricep, just based on the fact that they're already in a deficit. So try to avoid those major exercises, and that will help increase not only your strength, but your technique and your longevity as well.